I'm live indeed, praise the Lord. Just need to find a place where I can sit down or walk around, record this live for you. Anyway, it's me, Ari Dossett, or should I know me, Rashid. I am here with another live. Oh yes, it's perfectly fine over here, praise the Lord. And in this live, I want to talk about reference points. But anyway, I started 4 minutes as always, so first 4 minutes are for people to come in. So if you're here, let me know, please, you're here in the live chat. Thank you very much. Suzanne, thanks for being here. Good to have you here. It's a bit cloudy today, but the sun is still shining. Praise the Lord. All right. Club manager, thanks to have you here. Thanks for being here, I mean. All right. Again, first 4 minutes are for people to come in. So at 4 minutes, I'll begin with the teaching. As you all can see, I'm outside today. Well, not only today, but right now for this live stream, I'm outside, public. There are not that many people walking around here, but anyway, that's fine. Okay, thanks for the thumbs up, whoever gave it. Within less than 2 minutes, I'll begin the teaching. All right. Thanks for another thumbs up. By the way, can you all hear me well? I want to know that for sure. Can you hear me clearly? I know for sure whether or not I should go on speaker or I should just stay with the earpods or earphones, I mean. Okay, I have three thumbs up. Thank you very much. All right. The live of the day, I'm not sure how long it will take, maybe 35, 40 minutes, not that long because it's not a very big topic I'm discussing today, or actually I'm teaching you today, but it's still a topic that needs to be um, it needs to be mentioned because this is a point where some believers are struggling. And I just fellowship with a fellow believer yesterday, and he was struggling on this point, and it caused vexation in him. So that's why I need to mention this topic about reference points. Okay, it's almost 3, 2, 1. Okay, it's 4 minutes. Okay, reference points. Let's say you're driving your car. You have to go from California, a place in California, so you have to go from San Francisco, and you need to go to Las Vegas. I believe that's in the state of Nevada, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, when you're driving from San Francisco to Las Vegas, you have signs on the road. You have signs on the road that indicates to you if you're going the right direction. If you drive on the road and you see a sign saying Las Vegas, 100 miles, then you're, oh, what's 100 miles still in Las Vegas? Then you keep driving, then you see Las Vegas, 80 miles. So you keep seeing those reference points to indicate how far you are from Las Vegas. Those reference points are there to help you arrive in Las Vegas. Okay, those are reference points in traffic, which are fine. Let's say you're about to take an exam to pass a class, and You study the material and you do a mock exam. The mock exam is to indicate whether or not you master what you've been taught or whether you studied well. So the mock exam becomes a reference point for you to indicate whether you need to study more or not. Clear? If someone applies for a job somewhere, they do a background check. The background check is to check whether individual is suitable to work for the company. They check their resume or the CV, which refers to where they've worked before. They call some of their former employers to check how they were. So when it comes to applying for a job or getting a job, we know reference points are used. Now, as a scholar, because I'm a scholar myself, if you write a scholarly article, you put reference points to your sources, and everyone can say, here's where you got it from, and then they can do further research on their own. And by using reference points in your article, you show them that you didn't just make things up, but you did your research. So reference points are important in functioning in daily life. We can't deny that. So reference points are tools you use to be certain you're going in the right direction, or to be certain that you're dealing with something real. For example, if someone tells you you can invest in some Bitcoin program, but later you find out that this Bitcoin program is a big scam because the website associated with it has nothing to do with Bitcoin. Now, if you already invested $1,000 into that website, later you find out it has nothing to do with Bitcoin, and you realize you've lost your money. So you want to check a reference. You want to take a reference by calling whoever is necessary to find out whether this thing is legit. So in daily life, we use reference points to be certain that we're dealing with something real and whether we're going the right direction. Oh, and here's another thing. The world traumatizes you into chasing external references. For example, let's say you are a child, you're in class, and the teacher asks a question. You raise up your hand and you give an answer, and the teacher laughs at you because it's saying it's the wrong answer. What happens now? Your self-esteem has been assaulted by that grown man. And children in class laugh with the teacher. So this is a traumatic experience. From that point on, you develop the defense mechanism that you don't raise your hand anymore, even if you know the question. So later in life, this will hinder you. Because let's say you're a grown man now, you've graduated college, and now at work, the employer is asking for advice, is asking for input. Now, you have the right input to give, but somewhere you are reserved in giving your input. Now, if you give your input and the employer realizes, whoa, this is quite good, he may even promote you. But now, because you are still traumatized by that one moment when you were a child, when they humiliate you and assault your self-worth, now you are thinking, the employer is asking people for their input, but is this the input he wants? So now you keep looking for extra reference points, and because of that, you don't give your input, and you end up losing a potential blessing. So a lot of people, to prevent being victimized or to prevent being traumatized or being humiliated, they want to know for sure whether they are welcome somewhere. So they are craving external validation to be sure that they won't be treated poorly. So worldlings develop this addiction for reference points. One question to you: have you ever encountered those people that always doubted you? They were always suspicious of you? Or let's, for example, a supermarket. There's a supermarket right over here. I'm not going to enter it because I don't need anything. I'm fasting at the moment. And I have enough stuff at home already. But anyway, so let's say you enter a supermarket. And because of your ethnicity, the security guard keeps looking at you. The security guard keeps following you. And you think, why is the security guard following me? Check whether you're stealing or not. Oh, but here's the thing. He's not doing that to any of the other customers that come in. Now, what's going on? Due to the negative imagery in the media of your people, people develop this aversion that every time they see one of your people, they expect the worst. So they now want certainty that you're not there to steal. But hold on a minute. Are your people the only type of people that tend to steal? No. But they still expect you to steal because they're pathological. They expect the worst from you. So people that are paranoid, what is paranoia? Paranoia is when you're so obsessed with seeking external validation that you lose your mind. That's what paranoia is. If I need to describe paranoia very simply, paranoia is when you're obsessed with, with external validation. It's the same as someone is on his way to Las Vegas and he keeps checking the map 100 times. Let's say you and your husband, you're driving to Las Vegas and you're driving, and your husband keeps asking, are we on the right road? Are we on the right road? Keep telling, darling, we're on the right road. Look at the TomTom. Look at the GPS system. We're on the right road. But your husband keeps suspecting that you took the wrong turn. He's paranoid. He is so insecure on the inside that no amount of external validation can keep him at ease. He needs professional help. Now, we know now what paranoia is. This obsession with external reference points. When it comes to walking by faith, there's one thing you need to realize. We don't operate on external reference points. We don't. Our only reference point is the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. That's the only reference point we have. That's what we do. Our reference point is the death, it means it's the crucifixion, burial, and resurrection of Christ. That's our reference point. And we have a second reference point, that is that he will come back. And both reference points are testified in both the Old and New Testament. So the Bible is just a tool that reminds us of our reference points, namely the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. So we operate from internal conviction. Okay? Internal conviction. Write this down. Internal conviction. That's how we operate as believers. We don't operate based on external validation. That's how society does it. Think about the example I gave you. You're a little boy and you're humiliated in class. This trauma on your self-worth affects even how you relate to other people. Some children develop this antisocial attitude, always avoiding social intimacy because they're afraid to be hurt. Others develop this obsession to please others just to make sure they're not left out. So whether it turns into this antisocial attitude of always avoiding intimacy, which can lead to narcissistic tendencies and addictions, or it turns into this obsessive people pleasing, both are coping mechanisms to the trauma. So you have people out there who are quite avoidant of social intimacy based on the fact that they were hurt, and they keep referring back to the past that they were hurt and they want it to happen again. So everyone they get involved with, they already expect the individual to hurt them. So they're paranoid. They expect the individual to hurt them, even though the individual doesn't even know they exist. And when they're involved with someone, they keep looking for proof that the individual is not going to hurt them, even though there's no indication of the individual ever intending to hurt them at all. You even have marriages where this happens, where the one spouse keeps suspecting the other spouse of cheating. And then they go into therapy. And then the psychologist asks the husband, sir, why do you keep suspecting your wife of cheating? She had all the opportunity to cheat, she never did it. What makes you think she's cheating? And the husband cannot explain why he expects his wife of cheating. And the husband is not cheating himself. So there's some mental defect in the husband that needs to be addressed. And then the psychologist has separate sessions with the husband without the wife, and the psychologist finds out that his mother used to scream at him, publicly humiliate him all the time. And then the psychologist explains, sir, you haven't recovered from the psychological abuse of your mother. That's when now you're with your wife. Your wife, because she's a woman, she reminds you of your mother. So you have to face this. You need to process this. So it's not about your wife cheating or not. That's not the thing. You are anxious because you expect to be humiliated. And a wife cheating on her husband is humiliation. So you expect humiliation even though there's no proof of it. So chasing, looking for external validation is what Jesus Christ called looking for a sign. When Christ talked about looking for a sign, that's what he was talking about. Chasing or holding on to external reference points. And as I told you already, that's quite dangerous. It's easy for you to turn paranoid if you're holding on to external reference points. Now, again, when you're dealing with external technical stuff like driving to a location, you can use reference points on the map, okay? If you have to do a check in a laboratory, you can use a reference point, namely the manual. So a reference point in itself is not evil, but if you rely on reference points and you cling on reference points, that's idolatry, and that's not mentally sound. That's not healthy to do that. And here's the thing: when you are relying on external reference points, you are not operating from internal conviction, so you're absent emotionally. And by being emotionally absent, you now will experience your own emotional absence as pain. So the pain you feel is actually you being emotionally absent from yourself. You're internally divided. When you rely on external reference points for daily life, you develop this deficit emotionally inside of you because you're so clinging onto the outside. It's an addiction you're in. There is no difference between a guy smoking 50 cigarettes a day or someone shooting heroin in their veins or someone watching porn for 6 hours a day. Some people go even watch porn for 10 hours a day. Some of them are even married. They really need help. There's no difference between people with such strong addictions and someone always looking for external validation. It's the same thing. The difference is that you may not be chasing the reference points that you get from drugs or from working a lot or from heroin or from work or alcohol. There is not much difference between alcoholism and someone seeking proof that people are trustworthy. There's no actual difference between them. As simple as that. So, now you know the root of addictions also. Think about it. If someone sniffs some cocaine and they got this intense euphoria, in their mind, this euphoria becomes a reference point. So anytime they feel bad, they want this high again. And they end up mentally relying on this high. Their body becomes adapted to this high. And if they don't get the high, they don't feel good. But this high exhausts them, so the body develops a hormonal imbalance. And now it becomes a physical injury that they need to recover from. So addiction begins in the mind and it becomes something physical that needs to recover. Now, and addictions are based in trauma. There is some type of neglect or some type of wound that you haven't processed well, and that's why you end up chasing reference points. As simple as that. So chasing reference points is what Jesus Christ called looking after a sign. Now, it's one thing to look after a sign because you don't know any better. If you're not born again, you're not renewed in your mind, that's what you do automatically, looking for a sign. But once you realize that, hold on a minute, what am I doing? From that point on, you need to look for help. For example, if your wife confronts you, that she keeps suspecting you of cheating, while there's no proof at all and no indication for cheating, for example, she may tell you, darling, I was at work for 8 hours yesterday, and there are only females working with me on the workplace, and all those females are married, just like me. Yet expecting me, I was likely cheating. How can I be cheating if I was at work all the time? So once you're confronted with this dysfunction in you, now it's your responsibility to admit the dysfunction and admit that you need help and look for help. What happens in the world often is that people do not want to admit their dysfunction. It's quite painful to recognize that dysfunction. It's not an easy thing. So a lot of people don't want to admit it, so they'll deny it. And that's how they develop wickedness. Wickedness is toxic denial that becomes a pattern in your life. So wickedness is toxic denial, that's persistent denial that keeps you in dysfunction. That's wickedness. There's a difference between sin and wickedness. Sin is just the state of seeking relief, the state of fleeing. Wickedness is when you persist in fleeing no matter what and you keep denying that there's harm. That's wickedness. Reprobation is when you lost your internal balance completely and you are a dangerous human being. But that's a whole nother topic, reprobation. We already spoke about it. So, this looking after a sign is how society operates. Why? Because society traumatizes you. And now because you're traumatized, naturally you don't want to be traumatized again. So you always want to look for reference points you're safe. That's what society does to you to get you addicted to society's false promises. People that are not traumatized or people that are restored, they will never get along with society because they will see through everything. So society will never promote anyone who's not traumatized. Remember that. Society will never promote anyone that's not traumatized. You have to be dysfunctional in some way for society to promote you. Because people that are restored, people that are redeemed, they will never fall for anything society has to offer them. Either you're antisocial and you always see the worst in everything, or you are naive and not willing to face reality. But being healthy and restored society can't handle that. So, about chasing reference points, do you recognize any of that inside yourself? You don't have to answer in the live chat, but if you recognize that you still cling on to external reference points, now you know that there's a compulsive behavior inside of you that you need to outgrow. You outgrow looking after a sign. You do not just stop one day, just like that. As with every addiction, you have to outgrow your longing for that substance. And how do you outgrow that substance? By addressing what went wrong. If you're smoking 50 cigarettes a day, knowing full well you're destroying your own health and you can die before your time because of it, it is because somewhere you are socially disconnected from the community. And when you look at your friend circle, most of your friends or people you hang out with are fellow smokers, people with the same dysfunction. So what do you do then? You admit that there's a social dysfunction that's happened to you, and you're going to realize, okay, so I'm traumatized somewhere. And if you find out, okay, my relatives were not the best people, and the community around me neglected me, it's the awareness that you've been neglected by your community, is that awareness that you're running away from. And because you keep running away from the awareness that you were neglected, that's why your body craves some substitutes. And that's why you end up smoking all the time. But the moment you face that you've been neglected by your community, you will go through the pain, you will go through the grieving and the mourning, go through the grieving and the mourning, and while you grieve and mourn, you process the fact you've been neglected. And then eventually you realize, okay, I've been neglected by these people, but they're not the only people on the earth. There are also other people. Now you begin to connect with other people. And before you know it, you don't even think about smoking cigarettes anymore, because now you don't crave a substance anymore, because now you have actual healthy human connection. So that's why, for example, in Portugal, when you're addicted to drugs or to alcohol, whatever, they put you in a program, and in that program, they go to your past and they locate where you were socially neglected. And by dealing with the neglect and forcing you to face the neglect, eventually, once you face it, eventually you don't even want drugs anymore. And now it's easy for you to rehabilitate what happened to you. All done. There's some people passing by, but anyway, you can still hear me clearly. I assume, yes, you can hear me clearly. So, external validation or external reference points. It is what everyone does in the world. It is what the world promotes. Now, the world will intervene when it goes out of hand, when it turns into paranoia. And the world will intervene when it turns into extreme addictions like porn addictions or cocaine addictions or alcoholism. When it turns into extreme addictions or it turns into paranoia, it's only then that the world intervenes. But as long as it's managed by society, the world doesn't care. That's why you have people who work 40 hours a week, sometimes even work over hours, exhausted themselves, and they keep on working, 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 working. That's dysfunctional. That's called that. Then you are a workaholic. However, society will not call it out as something disturbing because hey, because you work so hard, you get more money. So society will promote this dysfunction just because this dysfunction benefits the corporate world. So when it comes to this compulsion for external validation, everyone in the world has it. All of us had it, but with most of us, it was moderated by environment. Because it was moderated by the environment, it never turned into extreme addictions like a porn addiction, a drug addiction, alcoholism, or sex addictions. With some people, though to neglect the community, this compulsive tendency goes out of hand. So the difference between you and someone, a drug addict, homeless on the street, is that with you, there were social restraints that kept this compulsive chasing in check. That's the only thing. If you had an environment, if you were in an environment where people neglected you socially, you would end up just like the drug addict on the street. And the thing is, a lot of people don't want to admit this. A lot of people don't want to admit that they are dependent on the care of the community. As social creatures, we are interdependent on the care of the community towards us. So if the community neglects you, you're in trouble. And that's the reason why people are so obsessed with your reputation. Now, your reputation matters. How people think about you affects your daily life. How people see you, how people relate to you, affects how you're treated, and also affects how people how far you can go in daily life. Now, you can overcome retaliation, of course. We can as believers, but your reputation matters. If people think bad about you, they will meditate bad about you, and that will cause psychic violence against you. And if people target you with psychic violence, like other people avoid you out of fear of being harmed as collateral damage. So how people think about you matters. So you should pay attention to your reputation. Associating with wrong people can also affect you the wrong way. Absolutely. But you shouldn't be obsessed with your reputation. And what happens now in the world, people are so obsessed with their reputation. You know why? Because once your reputation goes down, people tend to drop you. When people drop you, you don't have the care of the community anymore. And without the care of the community, you will go backwards mentally, and eventually you go backwards financially. You can end up homeless, you can end up addicted, and nobody cares. That's why in the world people are so violent and want to preserve their reputation. Because without a good reputation in the world, you are discarded. And nobody wants to be discarded. Those people you see as drug addicts in the streets, homeless, they are discarded by their communities because communities don't want to face the issue. So when common people see that someone is a drug addict and homeless, they think, oh Lord, I don't want to end up like that. How do they end up like that? Because they were discarded. You know what? I don't want to be discarded. So I'm going to do my best to police society so that nobody will discard me. And you know what? That individual has been discarded. Well, let's blame him. Let's blame the victim. Don't blame the community, because if we have to blame the community, we need to realize we are part of the community. That means we are partly to blame for that individual situation. So no, let's all blame the victim so that we are at ease. That's how it goes in the world. That's how it goes in the world. They always blame the victim so that the community doesn't have to face responsibility, no charges. Even when it's obvious that the community was neglectful. For example, let's say a woman was stalked by her ex-boyfriend, and the ex-boyfriend even threatened to kill her. And she made various police reports, but nobody did something about it. And now one day she ends up dead. Now, in that case, the community was absolutely responsible for what happened to her because the community was neglectful. Even in that case, they will not address neglect of the community. They will put all the blame only on the perpetrator. Okay, so the perpetrator is to blame. Absolutely. But the perpetrator should even have the chance to easily kill that woman because there were warning signals all along that something went wrong. So that's how it goes in the world. all neglects are social neglect, because we're social creatures. And from social neglect, it goes to financial neglect, mental neglect, emotional neglect. This is how it goes. Now, that's why worldlings, their reputation is all they have. Okay? So, worldlings will put up with abuse. They'll put up with being exploited. They'll put up with being lied to. They'll put up with being scammed and hoaxed. They'll put up with lying politicians. They'll put up with being treated like trash. They'll put up with anything as long as they retain the approval of the community. Because without the community's approval, they know that they'll be discarded and neglected. And people want to be reminded of that. So if you are the target of social neglect, people tend to be upset with you because you remind them that what's going on with you can easily happen to them. You remind them that if they don't perform well at work, they can be fired. If they're fired and they can't pay rent, they end up homeless. And when they end up homeless, people discard them. You remind them that the security they hold on to is not security at all. And that's why they're upset with you. That's why the world hates victims and the world wants to turn on victims. As simple as that. So it's understandable that in the world they're looking for reference points so often. It's understandable. However, it's not healthy. That's why people join cults. You ever wonder why people join cults? Now you know why. People join cults because in our cults, you cannot be discarded easily. People join weird cults. People allow themselves to be sexually exploited. People allow themselves to be financially drained by cults. Why? Because at least in our cults, you're looked after. And that's why a lot of people who grew up in cults rarely leave, even when they know that it's messed up. You know why? Because they're not sure that outside the cult, other people would look after them. At least in the cult, they know they're taken care of. They don't know if it's going to happen outside of the cult. So, now you understand why some victims of sex trafficking go back to their pimps after being rescued by the police. Because here's the thing, they've been sex trafficked. They've been sexually exploited. Various men enter in and out of them. They may have STDs because of what happened to them. According to society, they're damaged goods. And a lot of men will not want to put up with all that trauma and all those side effects. They may find a sweet man that may want to pick them up and deal with their traumas, but many won't. So a lot of times those victims of sex trafficking, they see it like this. Okay, in their mind it's like this. I've been sex trafficked. I've been tricked into this. The people around me know that something was wrong and they allow this to happen. I see this guy that put me in sex trafficking, this sex trafficker, he's living a wealthy lifestyle in the community. And people see him driving expensive cars, people see him live in this beautiful house. And this guy has connections with politicians, with the police and all of that. So people must know that this guy is onto something wrong. So why didn't people stop this guy? So the victim of sex trafficking realizes, hold on a minute, people are in on this. So if I escape this, people don't want to admit that the community is in on sex trafficking. Because if the community would invest more in sexual health, no sex trafficking would exist. The reason sex trafficking exists is because people are sexually defective or sexually diseased. And because of that, a lot of marriages don't function properly, and a lot of married men look for compensation in prostitution. That's why sex trafficking exists. So the community benefits from sex trafficking because by the existence of sex trafficking, the community has relief and don't have to deal with their sexual defectiveness. As simple as that. So the victim of sex trafficking sees all of this. And the victim realizes, if I come out and tell people what happened to me, they will blame me. Because if I show them that this was going on in the community, sex trafficking, people will be upset with me because though to my testimony, they have to face themselves. People don't want to face themselves, so they will turn on me. So if I leave this pimp, okay, I may end up homeless, I may end up addicted to drugs, I may end up discarded, but at least here, I know I'm exploited, but I know at least I get food, I get water, I have a place to stay. So that's how the victim of sex trafficking thinks. That's why you have victims of sex trafficking going back to their pimp. Why? It's because they clearly see the community neglected them. The community neglects themselves. If people were sexually healthy, no sex trafficking could even exist. But because the community doesn't want to face their own sexual defectiveness, that's why you have perpetrators taking advantage of this sexual defect of the community. So as long as the community is not willing to repent and face the sexual defectiveness and submit to the Heavenly Father's blueprint, sex trafficking will continue to happen. So the victim of sex trafficking know very well nobody wants to open their mouth and explain it and reveal the darkness that goes on. The same it is with sexual abuse of children. A lot of adults who were sexually molested as a child never talk about it because once they open their mouth and reveal that the community allowed bad things to happen to them, a lot of people are going to get upset. A lot of people are going to avoid them. You get me? Yes, after the grown victim is avoided because people don't want to face that there's bad things in the community. There is this female YouTuber who talks about narcissistic abuse often. And she's into BDSM and all of that also. She divorced a husband who was beating her and all of that. And then she explained in one of her videos that when she was, I believe, I don't know if it was 6 years old or 8 years old, but when she was a little child, a relative, a grown man, molested her. And she told her grandmother, and grandmother said, I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to hear about it. So the grown folks around her didn't take it seriously. And that was what sexually deformed her. And that's why she ended up later as an easy victim for narcissistic men. So she has been set up by her own community. Now, if a woman would reveal that she was sexually molested and the people around her just allowed it to happen, this is going to make people uncomfortable. And people turn on her for revealing this. They will say, why do you tell us this? What does that have to do with us? People begin to deflect. That's how people in the world are. Well, I don't have to use hundreds of examples. You get it now. In the world, communities don't want to face their own defectiveness, whether it's sexual, financial, whatever. So the victims who suffer due to the community's neglect, when they speak out, the community wants to kill them, or at least turn on them, or declare them crazy. For example, satanic ritual abuse happens in the Netherlands. The various victims speak out about it. But for decades, experts in the Netherlands are saying, well, satanic ritual abuse, people make it up in their head to get attention, or they try to deny it. It's only recently that there was an initiative in the Dutch parliament to have an independent research to satanic ritual abuse in the Netherlands. Why? Because a lot of people out here don't want to admit that satanic ritual abuse to children happens in this country. Because if that happens, you need to pay attention around them and need to face how people really are. So for decades, children have been satanically, ritually abused. And they've spoken out about it. People say, you're making this up. Look, if someone has been stabbed, they won't be walking around joyfully talking. If you've been stabbed with a knife, you'll be struggling while walking, and you have blood all over the place. You have to be a mess if you've been stabbed. If you've been stabbed, you walk around freely, smiling. You think, what the heck? How can you be stabbed and you're so at peace? Well, if someone has been satanically, ritually abused as a child by a bunch of adults, of course, and when they're adults themselves, they're going to be messed up. That's the result of being messed up as a child by adults. You're messed up. You turn into a messed up adult. So you need to listen to the messed up adults to figure out how do those adults end up so messed up. And if this adult comes from an environment where only he ends up so messed up, then it means there's something wrong with that community. People don't want to face things. So the reason I'm pointing all of this out is to show you that if you keep looking for external reference points, you end up enabling the harm society causes. Because society will only consider you if you enable the denial. The moment you reveal truth and you expose the darkness goes on, society turns on you. They will tell you, oh man, stop talking about it, it's not that important. We have the police that takes care of that, don't worry about it. Yeah, right. And that's why dudes from the streets with no high education, they have better skills in detecting pedophiles and calling the police on them than the police itself. That's why 15-year-olds know how to find a drug dealer in a neighborhood, but the police cannot. All right. So, that's why we are commanded to walk by faith and not by sight. Look, reference points are important for practical reasons in daily life. That's why you write a scholarly article, or whether you do historical research, or whether you're driving somewhere, or whether you're doing a background check on someone, but we should not rely on external reference points. Dion is a sister, by the way, but it's good that you answered Les Brown because I didn't know this question. Okay? So, as believers, we walk by internal conviction. Think about it. Even when in the medical world they give placebo to someone, a placebo is not the real medicine. But often a placebo has a good effect on the patient. You know why? Because of the internal conviction of the patient. The internal conviction of the patient that they're being helped, it boosts the immune system of the body, and the body ends up recovering. And it's not even a real medicine they've given to the patient. That shows you that your internal conviction is quite important. If your internal conviction is negative, you are harming your own physical health as well as your own mental health. If your internal conviction is healthy, you benefit your own body, your own mind, as well as your environment. So, even if someone undergoes surgery or some medical treatment, but he have a very depressing outlook on life, their emotional depressive outlook on life itself can hinder the healing process of the body. This happens. You can do your own research about it. I'm not a medical professional, but you can do your own research about this. It has been confirmed. Your own negative emotional state of being can hinder your healing, your physical healing of your body. By the way, a negative attitude or a bitter or a depressed emotional attitude can even cause diseases in your body. That's been confirmed also. So, even in the medical worlds where they don't even deal with spiritual stuff, they admit that your internal conviction matters. That's enough about the medical world, but you understand what I'm saying. So if even medical science, thousands of years later, admit that what the Bible has recorded thousands of years before is true, then why are believers not operating from internal conviction? Why do you keep chasing external reference points? As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So the way you relate to yourself internally affects how you'll be in life. As simple as that. All right? So, if your self-talk is negative, you're harming your own mental health and harming your own body. And demons are able to take advantage of you because your energy field is wounded. But if you have this strong conviction of good outcomes, that itself benefits you. And I explained before, when someone is negatively charged mentally, when someone has negative convictions, those negative convictions itself makes them an easy target. For example, I'm not talking about little children or people in the early teens now. I'm talking about grown folks, people in the late teens, and people that are adolescents and adults. That's what I'm talking about now. Let's say you have two women, both are 19 years old. 19, okay? You have two 19-year-old women. Both of them wear sexually provoking clothes, makeup, and they walk around freely. One of them is a feminist who has a bitter attitude towards men. who also sees men as predators and all of that. The other one, is, how should I say it? She is a new ager and who has positive convictions, positive affirmations. She's not a believer, she's a new ager, but she has positive convictions. Now, the energy field of the feminist one is bitter is grayish, heavy. The one of new ager is a bit lighter. Who is more likely to be sexually assaulted and sexually victimized? Which one of the two do you think? Let me know in the live chat. I'll wait till I get some answers. Who is more likely to be victimized? Yes, Suzanne, the miserable one. Because the miserable one is already intoxicated in negativity. And on that negative frequency, she attracts negative frequency. So men violent men who are sexually violent, they're operating in negativity. So if a woman is also invested in negativity, that's a match. But the one with positive convictions, let's say the one with positive convictions walks around. She wears a short skirt, high heels, and all of that. Let's say you have a rapist walking around. The rapist may see her and think, oh, I can make my move. When the rapist gets close, he becomes uncomfortable. Why? Because she's not on the same frequency. Even though they're both unbelievers, she's not on the same frequency. Her positive conviction puts her on a higher frequency than him. He's on a low, slow frequency, and she's on a higher frequency. And because this rapist can't handle healthy femininity, when she's operating close to healthy femininity, she frightens him. So when he gets close, thinking he can smack that ass, suddenly his hand is blocked. His body gets frightened, thinking, and then she looks at him and says, hi. She greets him, and he thinks, what the F? And he runs away. Why? Because her being on that frequency of positivity scares off his negative frequency that he's on. But if you have a similar woman walking around, when she's bitter, intoxicated with anger towards men, that anger attracts and makes rapists comfortable being around her. So your state of mind in daily life matters. If you are invested in negativity, you will attract and end up in negativity. As simple as that. But if you are invested in positivity, that will hinder negativity. I'm saying negativity cannot happen around you, but you hinder it. You get what I'm saying here? So that's why your state of mind matters. If someone thinks like a victim and they have this victim conviction, then that will attract victimizers. Now, if you've been victimized, if you're the victim because you've been victimized, you've been victimized. If you've been victimized, you've been victimized. Don't deny that you've been victimized. If you've been victimized, you've been victimized. But if you develop a victim mentality, now you are in a negative vibration, and this negative vibration attracts victimizers. And then when victimizers feel comfortable around you and they act out against you, now your victim mentality is confirmed. And by your victim mentality being confirmed, now you see, I'm a victim, look what happened. And then you stay in that victim frequency, and then it happens again and again and again. If you've been victimized, admit you've been victimized, process what happens, and realize, well, better exists. When you do that, future victimizers will be reluctant to act out against you because they'll feel uncomfortable around you. So I'm saying that if you have a victim mentality, someone victimizes you, that's all on you. No, the other individual should not victimize you. But you cannot make it easy for victimizers to victimize you. If you have a victim mentality, you make it quite easy for others to victimize you. If you have a positive mindset, you have positive convictions, that makes it hard for people to victimize you. I'm not saying it's impossible, it makes it hard. But if you walk by faith in the resurrection power of Christ, then you'll be ahead of every victimization. If they attack you or they retaliate against you, it will backfire when you walk in the resurrection power of Christ. So, Your internal convictions matter. So believers, we operate from internal convictions. The kingdom of God is within you, Christ said. So we don't chase church attendance. We don't chase human temples that humans built out there. We don't chase from conference to conference. No, we have internal conviction and we operate from internal conviction. That is how we do it. As simple as that. So the battery of my phone is almost empty. So okay, that's why I'm about to close the live stream now, earlier. So if you have any more questions about this topic, please let me know in the live chat, please. Let me know. And my fast is ending also, so I'll be eating afterwards. But if you have questions now, let me know in the live chat, please. Thank you very much. And by the way, Earl Gates Jr., thank you very much for your donation to PayPal. I just saw it. Thank you very much. Well, Dion, how do you mean the sound was distorted? I have other people listening to those videos, and they can clearly hear what I was saying. I made other videos also about the victim mentality. You can check them also on my YouTube. And I also repeated partially over here that your internal convictions matter. I have a series called Mark of Victimhood. Watch that series, Mark of Victimhood. There's 3 videos. It explains it a lot. I did the teaching a few times over the years, so you can just search some keywords on my channel. You will find the redo videos. All right. All right. Okay. Oh yeah, Suzanne, thanks you very much for your donations. Suzanne's very much appreciated. Okay, I look into that 3-part series because I didn't hear any sound distortion years ago, so I'll check it out for Dion. If necessary, I'll make another series about it. So that's good. Are there any other questions? No. I don't see any other questions here, so okay. My phone battery is about to die now, but anyway, thank you all for being here. Keep agreeing with Christ, and I'll see you next time. Be at peace.